Richard Ashford stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his Manhattan penthouse, watching the city pulse with life 68 stories below. At 54 years old, he had accumulated more wealth than 10 generations of his family could spend. For $1 billion, give or take a few $100 million depending on the market's mood. But wealth, he had learned, was a magnifying glass that revealed the true nature of everyone around him. And lately, he had begun to suspect that the people closest to him saw him not as a person, but as a walking bank account. His attorney, Morris Klein, sat across from him in the leather chair, a stack of legal documents spread across the mahogany desk. "Richard, I have to say this again. What you're proposing is insane. $10 million to 4 women, just to see how they spend it? And you're seriously considering changing your entire estate plan based on the results?" "Not just considering, Morris. I'm going to do it." Richard turned from the window, his eyes sharp despite the gray in his hair. "My daughter thinks money grows on trees. My goddaughter treats my wallet like her personal ATM. My girlfriend seems more interested in my portfolio than in me. And then there's Elena, my housekeeper, who's been invisible in my home for 7 years, who I know nothing about except that she makes the best coffee I've ever tasted and never asks for anything. So you're going to give them each $10 million and watch what happens?" "Exactly. I'm going to give them each a black card with access to $10 million. They'll have 1 week to spend it however they want, with only one rule: they must spend it on themselves, not donate it, not give it away. Just pure, selfish spending. And at the end of that week, we'll sit down and discuss every single purchase." Morris rubbed his temples. "And then what? You're going to judge them based on whether they buy yachts or shoes?" "I'm going to judge them based on who they reveal themselves to be when money is no object. Character, Morris. That's what I'm looking for. And whoever shows me the most character, the most integrity, the most humanity." Richard paused, letting the weight of his words settle. "That person gets everything. My entire fortune. All $4 billion. Morris nearly dropped his pen. "You're going to leave your entire estate to one of 4 women based on a spending contest? Richard, your daughter will sue. Your family will. My family will accept my decision because it will be legally airtight. That's why you're here. Draw up the documents. Make it ironclad. The winner of this test becomes my sole heir, with full control of my assets, my companies, everything. I'll announce it at the end of the week. And what if they all fail your test? What if none of them show this character you're looking for?" Richard smiled coldly. "Then I'll leave it all to charity and let them fight over whatever crumbs are left. But someone will rise to the occasion, Morris. Someone always does when the stakes are high enough." 3 days later, Richard gathered the 4 women in his office. His daughter Victoria stood by the bar, 28 years old and beautiful in the way that unlimited wealth allows, her designer dress probably costing more than most people earned in a month. His goddaughter Amanda sprawled on the couch, 31 years old, a social media influencer who documented her lavish lifestyle for 3 million followers. His girlfriend Cynthia, 42 and elegant, examined her manicure with studied indifference, the 5-carat diamond on her finger catching the afternoon light. And then there was Elena. Elena Torres stood near the door, still in her gray housekeeper's uniform, her dark hair pulled back in a simple bun, her hands clasped in front of her in habitual deference. She looked terrified to be in the same room as the others, convinced she had done something wrong. "Thank you all for coming," Richard began, moving to stand behind his desk. "I've asked you here because I'm going to do something unusual. I'm going to give each of you $10 million. Victoria's eyes widened. Amanda sat up straight. Cynthia's hand froze mid-gesture. Elena looked like she might faint. $10 million, Richard repeated. Each of you will receive a black credit card with access to a dedicated account. You'll have 1 week to spend as much or as little of that money as you want. The only rule is that you must spend it on yourselves. No donations, no gifts to others, no charitable contributions. This is about you and what you value. Daddy, what is this about? Victoria asked, her voice cautious. Is this some kind of game? You could call it that. At the end of the week, we'll meet here again, and you'll explain every purchase you made. And then I'm going to make a decision that will change all of your lives. What decision? Cynthia asked, her eyes narrowing. Richard pulled 4 black cards from his desk drawer and held them up. Whoever impresses me most with their choices will become my sole heir. Everything I own, every asset, every company, every dollar, it will all go to one of you. The room erupted. Victoria started shouting. Amanda's mouth fell open. Cynthia stood up, her face flushing with anger. And Elena, quiet Elena, simply stared at the card Richard was extending toward her as if it were a grenade. You're serious? Victoria demanded. You're going to cut me out of your will over a shopping spree? I'm going to give my fortune to the person who deserves it most, Richard said calmly. And I'm going to determine that by watching how you handle wealth when you think there are no consequences. Take the cards. The clock starts now. One by one, they took their cards. Victoria snatched hers with barely controlled fury. Amanda grabbed hers with shaking hands, already pulling out her phone to document the moment. Cynthia took hers with a calculating expression, her mind clearly racing. And Elena accepted hers with a whispered, "Thank you, sir," that was almost inaudible. 1 week, Richard said. Make your choices. Show me who you are. The first 72 hours were revealing in ways Richard hadn't fully anticipated. He had access to all 4 accounts through a private banking portal, able to see every transaction in real time. Morris had advised against watching obsessively, but Richard couldn't help himself. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about the rest of his life, about who would carry on his legacy, about whether anyone in his inner circle actually gave a damn about him or just his bank account. Victoria's spending was aggressive and angry. Within the first 6 hours, she had dropped $3 million on jewelry, cars, and a down payment on a mansion in the Hamptons. She was making a statement, showing her father that she didn't need his test, didn't need his approval. By day 3, she had spent $8.2 million, and the purchases were becoming increasingly erratic. A speedboat she would never use. A racehorse she would never ride. Art she would never look at. She was spending out of spite, and Richard could feel the resentment in every transaction. Amanda's approach was more predictable but equally disappointing. She turned the whole thing into content. Within an hour of receiving the card, she had posted a video to her followers announcing that she was going to spend $10 million in a week and document the entire journey. Her purchases were designed for maximum visual impact: a diamond-encrusted phone case for $50,000, a private jet flight to Paris for a croissant, a wardrobe of designer clothes that she modeled in daily try-on hauls. By day 3, she had spent $6.5 million and gained 200,000 new followers. She was treating his money like a prop for her personal brand, and every purchase was calculated for engagement metrics rather than actual desire. Cynthia's spending was the most strategic and, in some ways, the most disturbing. She started by purchasing property: 3 condos in Manhattan, a beach house in Miami, a ski lodge in Aspen. All of it in her name alone, not as joint assets. Then she moved to liquid investments: stocks, bonds, a stake in a tech startup. By day 3, she had spent $7 million, and none of it was frivolous. She was building herself an escape plan, Richard realized. She was using his money to ensure that if they broke up, she would be independently wealthy. Every purchase screamed, "I never loved you, just your wallet." And then there was Elena. For the first 24 hours, there were no charges on Elena's card at all. Nothing. Richard checked the account repeatedly, worried the card was defective. But it was active. Elena simply wasn't using it. He imagined her at home, probably in some tiny apartment in Queens or the Bronx, staring at the card, unable to believe it was real, too terrified to test it. The first charge came 31 hours after he gave her the card. Roosevelt Hospital. $53,000. Richard's heart clenched. Medical bills. Elena was using her first purchase to pay off medical debt. He dug deeper into the transaction records. It was a payment plan for treatment she had received 2 years ago, something she had been paying off in tiny increments while working in his home. She had been in debt while cleaning his toilets, and he had never known. The second charge came 6 hours later. Queens Community College. $48,000. Tuition payment in full for someone named Maria Torres. Her daughter, probably. Elena was spending her windfall on her daughter's education. The third charge was at a grocery store. $800. Then a furniture store, $3,000 for a living room set. A phone store, $1,200 for a smartphone. By day 3, Elena had spent $107,000 of her $10 million. She was spending like someone who had never had money before and couldn't quite believe it would last. Small, careful purchases that would improve her life in concrete, meaningful ways. On day 4, something shifted. Elena made a payment to a law office. $25,000. Richard called the office, using his connections to find out what it was for. Immigration attorney, specializing in citizenship applications. Elena was undocumented, or her family was, and she was fixing it. She was using the money to solve a problem that had probably haunted her for years. Then came a payment to a medical clinic. $150,000. Not for past bills this time, but prepaid cancer treatment. Richard felt his chest tighten. Cancer. Elena or someone she loved had cancer, and she had been living with that knowledge while folding his laundry and cooking his meals. By day 5, Elena had spent $320,000. She bought herself a modest car, a used Toyota, paid in full, $15,000. She purchased new clothes, but from Target and Macy's, not Chanel and Gucci. $2,000 total. She paid 6 months of rent in advance on what had to be her apartment. $14,000. And then, on day 6, Elena did something that made Richard pick up his phone and call her directly. She had walked into a financial advisor's office and invested $9.2 million. Not in risky stocks or flashy ventures, but in boring, stable index funds and bonds. She had taken almost all of her $10 million and locked it away for the future, for security, for the knowledge that she and her daughter would never be hungry again. When she answered his call, her voice was shaking. "Mr. Ashford? Is something wrong? Did I break a rule?" "No, Elena. No rules broken. I wanted to check on you. How are you doing?" There was a long pause. "I'm scared, sir. This money, it's so much money. I keep thinking it will disappear, that I'll wake up and it was all a dream. I'm scared to spend it. I'm scared not to spend it. I don't know what I'm supposed to do." "What do you want to do?" Another pause. "I want to make sure Maria finishes college. I want to make sure she gets treated for her leukemia, that she has every chance to survive. I want to fix my immigration status so I don't have to be afraid every day that I'll be deported and taken away from her. I want a car that doesn't break down so I can get to work reliably. I want..." Her voice broke. "I want to stop being so tired, Mr. Ashford. I'm so tired all the time." Richard closed his eyes. "Elena, when was the last time you bought something just because you wanted it? Not because you needed it, not because someone else needed it. Just because you wanted it." I don't think like that, sir. I think about what Maria needs, what the bills need, what has to be done. There's no space for wanting." "Make space," Richard said softly. "You have one more day. Buy yourself something that makes you happy. Not practical, not necessary. Just something that brings you joy. I'll try, sir. On the seventh and final day, Elena made one last purchase. Richard watched it come through on his portal and felt something shift in his chest, some fundamental understanding clicking into place. She had spent $12,000 at a travel agency. 2 tickets to Peru, business-class flights and a week at a nice hotel. Lima, specifically. The city where she was born, where she hadn't been in 23 years, since she crossed the border looking for a better life. She was going home, and she was taking her daughter with her, and she was doing it in comfort rather than fear. The total amount Elena spent in 1 week, $9,547,000. Almost all of it invested or spent on solving problems and securing her future. Only $12,000 spent on pure happiness. When all 4 women gathered in his office on the 8th day, the contrast was staggering. Victoria looked exhausted, surrounded by shopping bags and receipts, her eyes red from crying or drinking or both. Amanda was still filming, documenting every moment, her phone held up to catch everyone's reactions. Cynthia sat poised and perfect, a slight smile on her face, confident in her strategic choices. And Elena stood by the door again, but this time she didn't look afraid. She looked tired, yes, but also at peace, like someone who had just set down a heavy weight they had been carrying for decades. Richard had prepared a speech, but when he looked at them, really looked at them, the words evaporated. He simply held up the legal document Morris had prepared, the one that would transfer his entire estate to one person. Victoria, he began, his voice heavy. You spent $9.8 million in a week. Almost all of it on things you don't need and will never use. You bought out of anger, out of spite, trying to punish me for daring to question your worth. Every purchase screamed, I don't need you, but all I heard was, I never valued you except as a source of money. You're my daughter, and I love you, but you've shown me that you would burn through my fortune in a year and have nothing to show for it but resentment and empty luxury. Victoria's face crumpled. Daddy. Amanda, Richard continued, turning to his goddaughter. You spent $7.2 million and turned my money into a performance. Every purchase was content, every moment was a photo opportunity. You didn't think about what you wanted or needed. You thought about what would get likes, what would get shares, what would make you more famous. You treated my fortune like a prop for your personal brand. That's not character. That's opportunism. Amanda lowered her phone for the first time in a week, her face pale. Cynthia. Richard's voice went cold. You spent $8.9 million building yourself an exit strategy. Every purchase was calculated to ensure you would be financially independent if our relationship ended. You used my money to bet against our future together. You showed me that you never believed in us, that you were always planning for the day you would leave. That's not love. That's a business transaction. Cynthia stood up, her composure finally cracking. You're seriously going to punish me for being practical? For not being stupid with money? I'm going to punish you for never caring about me as a person, Richard replied quietly. He turned to Elena, who was shaking by the door, her hands clutched together. Elena. You spent $9.5 million. Almost all of it invested for the future, or spent solving problems that I never knew you had because I never bothered to ask. Cancer treatment for your daughter. Legal fees to fix your immigration status. A car so you could get to work reliably. Rent paid in advance so you wouldn't live in fear of eviction. And at the end, after everything else was taken care of, you spent $12,000 to go home. To see the place you left behind 23 years ago, to show your daughter where you came from. Elena's eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry if I didn't spend it right. I tried to. You spent it perfectly, Richard interrupted. You showed me something I thought was extinct in my world. You showed me that money is a tool, not a trophy. That security matters more than status. That taking care of your family comes before taking care of yourself. That even with $10 million, you remained fundamentally who you are, careful, thoughtful, selfless to a fault. He held up the legal document. This is my will. My entire estate, all $4 billion, every asset I own. It's going to one person in this room. The person who proved to me that wealth doesn't corrupt if you have character. The person who showed me that the most trustworthy people are often the ones who never asked for anything in the first place. Richard looked directly at Elena. It's going to you, Elena Torres. Everything. When I die, you will inherit my entire fortune. The room exploded into chaos. Victoria started screaming. Amanda dropped her phone. Cynthia lunged toward the desk, demanding to see the document. And Elena collapsed into the chair behind her, hyperventilating, shaking her head frantically. No, Elena gasped. No, sir, please, I can't. I'm just a housekeeper. I can't manage billions of dollars. I don't know how to run companies. I'll ruin everything. Please, sir, give it to Miss Victoria, she's your daughter, she should. She should learn that money is earned through character, not birth, Richard said firmly. He moved to Elena, kneeling beside her chair. Elena, listen to me. You won't be alone. You'll have advisors, lawyers, accountants, entire teams of people to help you manage it. But the decisions will be yours. The future of my companies, my charities, my legacy, it will all be in your hands. Because I trust you. I trust that you'll think about what matters. I trust that you won't waste it on yachts and jewelry. I trust that you'll do good with it, real good, the kind that changes lives. But I'm nobody, Elena whispered. I'm invisible. You were invisible, Richard corrected gently. Now you're the most important person in this room. Now you're the future of the Ashford fortune. And I can't think of anyone more deserving. He stood and addressed the others, who were still reeling, still protesting. Morris will distribute the relevant documents. Victoria, you'll receive a trust fund of $20 million, enough to live comfortably but not enough to destroy yourself with excess. Amanda, the same. Cynthia, we're done, both personally and financially. You'll receive nothing. Pack your things and be out of my penthouse by tomorrow. You can't do this. Cynthia shrieked. I'll sue. You'll lose, Morris said quietly, speaking for the first time. The documents are airtight. Mr. Ashford has the right to leave his estate to whomever he chooses. And he's chosen. Over the next hour, as Victoria sobbed and Amanda sat in stunned silence and Cynthia raged and threatened, Richard sat with Elena and explained what would happen next. She would remain his housekeeper for now, if she wanted, but with a salary befitting her new status. She would begin meeting with his financial team, learning about the businesses, the investments, the charitable foundations. She would be trained, prepared, supported in every way possible. And when he died, not tomorrow, hopefully, but someday, she would step into a role that would terrify most people but that Richard believed she could handle precisely because she was terrified. Why me? Elena asked for the 100th time, tears streaming down her face. Why not your daughter? Why not someone from your world? Because you're not from my world, Richard said simply. You're from the real world, where money means security, not status. Where $10 million is an impossible fortune, not a weekend in Monaco. Where character is built through struggle, not inherited through birth. You know the value of $1, Elena. Not in theory, but in practice. You've lived without, so you'll never forget what it means to have. That's why it has to be you. 3 months later, Elena Torres walked into the Ashford Foundation headquarters wearing a modest suit, her hair professionally styled, her posture still uncertain but growing stronger every day. Maria, in remission and thriving, had insisted on coming with her, holding her mother's hand as they toured the building that would one day be theirs to steward. Richard watched from his office, a slight smile on his face. He had shocked the business world with his announcement, generated thousands of news articles speculating about his sanity, fielded furious calls from family members demanding explanations. But he had never doubted his choice. The test hadn't been about spending money. It had been about revealing character. And Elena had revealed something so rare in his world that it was almost extinct: genuine humility, authentic gratitude, and the unshakable knowledge that wealth was a responsibility, not a reward. Victoria had eventually stopped crying and started attending therapy, beginning the long process of understanding that her value didn't come from her father's bank account. Amanda had quit social media, at least temporarily, shaken by how easily she had turned everything into content. Cynthia had disappeared, probably already hunting for another wealthy man to target. But Elena remained, learning and growing and slowly accepting that this impossible thing was real. She still made Richard coffee every morning, even though he kept telling her she didn't have to. She said it helped her feel grounded, reminded her of who she was before everything changed. "Who you were is who you still are," Richard told her one morning, accepting his perfectly prepared cup. "That's the whole point. Money didn't change you. It just revealed you." Elena smiled, a real smile, not the deferential one she used to wear like armor. "I'm still terrified, you know. Every day I'm terrified I'll make a mistake, that I'll let you down." "Good," Richard said. "The day you stop being terrified is the day I'll worry. Fear keeps you humble. And humility is why you're perfect for this." He thought about the test, about the 4 black cards and $10 million each, about the week that had changed all their lives. People called it crazy, called him senile, called the whole thing a publicity stunt. But Richard knew better. He had given away $40 million to learn what he needed to know, that the people who deserve fortunes are usually the ones who never expected them, that character is revealed in choices, and that sometimes the most invisible person in the room is the only one actually seeing clearly. Elena Torres, former housekeeper, future billionaire, stood beside him looking out at the city, holding her coffee, marveling at the view. "I keep thinking I'll wake up," she admitted. "You won't," Richard promised. "This is real. And when I'm gone, you'll make sure my fortune does real good in the world. Not because you have to, but because you can't imagine doing anything else. That's why it's yours." In his desk drawer, locked away, Richard kept the 4 black cards as a reminder. A reminder that wealth reveals truth, that character can't be bought, and that sometimes the greatest legacy you can leave is not in buildings or banks, but in recognizing worth where others see only invisibility. Elena had passed his test not by spending wisely, but by remaining herself, careful, thoughtful, and fundamentally good, even when given every reason to change. And that, Richard thought, was worth more than all $4 billion combined.